Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. You're what, a doctor?
I'm a doctor of emergency medicine, board certified emergency medicine, employed at Maryville Emergency Room, as well as hopefully transitioning to director of emergency medicine at Phoenix ER and Medical Hospital.
Oh, that's
within
cool.
the next week. Yeah,
Really? Where's that at?
it's at Dobson and Queen Creek.
That's a ways.
Yeah,
That's all right. You got to go where the jobs are. So I asked you to come on to talk about what is the current situation with COVID. Like, where are we at now? Because when we did the podcast last, I mean, a lot has happened. A lot has changed since the last time. Where do you think we're at right now?
so I think there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation and clickbait kind of things that, so like, say this is your normal scale of what is good information and bad information. You get these clickbaits that get this incredible coverage of don't use ibuprofen, don't use steroids, hydroxychloroquine is the new thing and it's going to save us all. And I mean, I've even heard people talking about ivermectin, which is a parasite medication. And then what they don't hear is you hear these little whisper corrections. You hear this big, loud, trumpeted, don't use ibuprofen. And now there's this correction of, oh, well, we don't have any data on ibuprofen and coronavirus. So you didn't hear that part. You just heard don't use ibuprofen.
Yeah.
So now everyone's bought Tylenol out of the stores, and then you don't realize that ibuprofen there's no data to support what the Minister of Interior in France said. And to your point, which is exactly perfect, is what information do you trust, and how can you verify that information?
Yeah.
And in this day and age, the amount of information is a tidal wave.
Yeah.
And the ability to verify is, I mean, you can, like the statement, there's lies, there's damn lies, then there's statistics. So
and I told you, my dad said, used to tell me, Mike, 50% of what people say is a lie, and then 25% of that is exaggerated. And I hold that true in my life.
And that's, I mean, I don't know if it's a good website. I don't know anything. It seems like it updates pretty regularly. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the Arizona Department of Health and the things that I can check, it follows pretty closely with those. So it's as far as I'm able to check, this is an adequate website. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's, I mean, what if it's put on by Trump, or what if it's put on by Hillary Clinton? I don't know. But as far as I can tell, I'm trying to use these numbers because it's what I have.
Yep.
And so maybe somebody will comment or say like, hey, World Meters is totally bogus, and then I can figure out something with that. But as far as I can do, I look at these statistics and I try and interpret them the best that I can for how I'm going to live my life in this crazy age. And so the big things that I look at with this disease is much more serious than the flu. And I think that's like the first thing to tell people, like, this is a serious disease. And the thing that I pull from the data over and over again is that over 55 is really the at-risk categories. And then if you add in there what I call comorbidities, which is any kind of illness that takes away from your overall ability of health. And I talked about in class that the biggest thing is as you age, you lose pulmonary function. That's just normal.
Yeah.
The elasticity of your lungs is not there. They get a little more rigid. Mm-hmm. Your muscles in your rib cage actually just decrease in their ability to expand and contract just from a point of strength and endurance. And so as you age, your pulmonary function decreases. If you have excellent pulmonary function, that tends to be one of the things that seems to protect you in coronavirus. And so it's not a great headline. If you're more healthy, you will probably do better in coronavirus. I mean, everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah.
And so it's not one of those things that's really talked about.
Yeah.
But I mean, exercise is how you increase your pulmonary function.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is an incredible way to increase your pulmonary function. In fact, you're actually breath holding when you're being choked.
Yeah.
And that probably helps recruit some, as you take your next big, huge, deep breath,
Yep.
you probably actually recruit some more alveoli and open them up.
What do you
The headline with that is
work
more
out?
healthy people do
Yeah.
better with coronavirus.
Yes, yeah.
Not a great. Wow.
It's not as it's not as sexy
Not very
headline.
clickbaity.
Yeah. What are you seeing with like kids with this? I know my wife was nervous for a while with kids. She saw some stuff that happened in New York, and then she was curious about that. And I said, I don't really have an answer for you. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But she tends to read things that are scary. I don't know.
Okay, well, I have on world meters, I have age of coronavirus deaths, which is it's from the New York City Health May 13th. So they have this is on May 13th. They had a total in New York of 15,230 deaths, and that's again from world meters. So I realize that all sources are corrupt and polluted, but this is the best I got, and so this it's really interesting. They break down the percentage death, and then they also talk about underlying conditions, which is is comorbidity, so things that affect your health. And in the 0 to 17 range, there's been 3 deaths. Of them, all 3 people had underlying conditions that put them at risk. And so if you have in the 0 to 17 range, everyone from New York of these 15,000 as of May 13th, so all these contingencies on that data, and it's from a source that we don't know, like all those things together is still really reassuring that people under 18, you have to already be sick or impaired in your health before you're able to have a bad outcome from the coronavirus. And I know it's anecdotal evidence, but all my bottom 3 children for sure had the coronavirus. I mean, they had the classic 14 days of illness. They had initially 1 episode of diarrhea followed by headache and cough. It persisted throughout. They had day 8, 9, and 10 was the peak of their disease. And the other thing is my one daughter Coley has asthma, and she was the most affected, but I was never concerned about them at all during that whole course. They're healthy kids, and they had fevers, and they had cough. It was mostly in the morning they were fine, and then in the evening as they would go through, and I gave them Tylenol, I gave them ibuprofen, and I did all the kind of recommendations that I know how to do, which is some inhaled steroids. I used albuterol with my daughter when she was wheezing, and they did great, and they're totally recovered, and they've been recovered for more than a month now without any sequelae that I can find at all. And so personally, and looking at the data, under 18 years of age, your risk for having severe disease is almost non-existent. And that, again, I think points to being healthy and having good pulmonary function. The next category that I look at is the 18 to 45 years of age. And that is great, because this is the people, this is your workforce. This is the people that are coming into jiu-jitsu. This is all the people that that are the more active portions of our society. And the data that they have, again, is from May 13th from New York, and it's again out of those 15,230 deaths. So in the 18 to 44 range, they had 601 deaths, which is surprising to me, because I feel like even in my practice, the only people that I have seen that had more severe disease had some serious underlying condition. However, then I slide over to with underlying conditions, and out of the 601, 476 had an underlying condition, which again, they don't tell you what that is. It could be they had stubbed toenail. I don't know, or ingrown toenail. I don't know, but that makes more sense to me. That now, if you take out the rest of the numbers, they have it looks like 125 people that are left over from the 476 to the 601, and of those, it's unknown in 108 if they had an underlying condition. And so,
oh wow,
so that's, they didn't know, they don't have the data, which I actually like that World Meters puts that in there, because you don't know. So that's good that they kind of say that. And then the people that they know they for sure died without any underlying conditions in that age range were 17 out of the 601. So even if we take all of the numbers of the unknown and everything, 125 out of 601, and then look at the amount of total deaths of 15,230, that's still a very small percentage. It's I don't know what the numbers is, but the total number of deaths 18 to 44 is 3.9%, and if it's 125 of 601, it's about a quarter of that. So it would probably be about 1% of the deaths. Even with not knowing if they had an underlying condition or not, adding those in to make it the worst possible number, just from this data. And again, I don't want to get into the statistics of it because this is not like a perfect statistic, but it's what I have, and I'm trying to not manipulate the data very much to make sure I get the truest picture. And by doing that, I can give you the worst and the best. So in that range, it would be 125 possible non-underlying condition deaths aged 18 to 44 as of May 13th in New York of the 15,230
out of 15,000
reported deaths.
Jeez.
And so that's, again, it's a very low percentage. And then so they say that it's 0.8% of unknown and without underlying conditions. So they've added them together, and that only 0.8% of the people 18 to 44. So again, this goes to the pulmonary function. And then the things that I don't like is when you get up above 75 years of age, I mean, this is including about 50% of the deaths. And so again, it goes to that like overall health. The chance that you have a comorbidity at that point is very high, or that just your plain pulmonary function is not very good.
Do you think if you're older and you do take care of your pulmonary health that you have a better chance? Like, I mean, obviously you know, even myself, I just turned 40. Like my cardio in jiu-jitsu, I don't recover though like I was when I was 20. Like the next day, I feel it. You know, like so when you're 70, do you feel like you could still work on yourself? So like, give yourself a better chance. Like even if COVID didn't exist, you should probably
swimming, any kind of
keeping
mild
active,
aerobic activity.
Keeping
is
active.
what you want. Your body has a natural rhythm gone through your hypothalamus and your medulla, which sets your breathing rate. And everyone has this, and it's between, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but I believe it's between 5 and 7 breaths. You take an extra deep breath. That's just a normal thing that's set into you. And what that does is it allows the lower portion of your lungs, which you're talking about all the way around the back, those alveoli, they're little sacs that have something called surfactant in them. Mm-hmm. And the surfactant helps them stay open even under significant tension to close. And so when you take that deep breath, you pop those open and maintain them open as kind of almost like a reserve space for you to increase your oxygen flow as capillaries go past those. You get the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And so that extra breath, or if you practice doing that breathing more repeatedly, you'll keep them open longer, and they can stay open longer, and that really does increase your ability to oxygenate your blood and to get rid of carbon dioxide, which is the byproduct of exercise. So it's really interesting. Again, so I just want to come back to the kid thing. The chance that a kid has a serious disease or even death at this point in Arizona, with, I think we only have, I mean, I can look at the data again, but we don't have, proportionately wise, I think we have about 15,000 cases here in Arizona, which means we have about, I think, close to 7 million people in the state. So our proportion of people who have the disease, and then the chance that a kid gets it and has a severe illness is astonishingly low. The thing that I worry about, and I think people need to consider, is not that that any of your kids, anyone under 18 is going to have a fatality from this, or even 18 to 44. I would even kind of stretch that data out and say it's very unlikely. I mean, really unlikely, like less than 1%. You're going to have a severe illness, especially if you're healthy. And so the consideration needs to be not for those people, because high likelihood of asymptomatic or low severity disease. The problem is transmission to somebody who does have those comorbidities.
If grandma's living in the house with you.
Grandma living in the house. And then there is a genetic predisposition to this as well.
Oh, really?
I think it's not, I can't say that it's corroborated by anything, but I've talked to multiple physicians, and it seems like we're seeing families with more severe disease even more so than so it's like the elderly are getting more severe disease, and then like specific families, and so the younger people that do get disease in the 40s to age range, it's like their parents have already died from it. And I don't know if that's that specific strain of virus is more virulent or more penetrant, but I'm concerned that there's a genetic predisposition that some people are genetically more susceptible
But
to.
you think over
severe
time
disease.
with research they'll understand that when they're starting to go through all the data over time.
And there's some confounders with that too. Like it could be just that they had so much heavier exposure, or there was some sort of genetic like predisposition for renal disease or something along those lines, and maybe that is the thing that there's higher comorbidities, or that strain of virus was more every 14 days it mutates, which is crazy. That's its rate of mutation.
That's okay.
So it could be that there was a bad strain. It could be that there was a genetic susceptibility. It could be even conditional, like environmental conditions. But I'm thinking that we're going to be able to tease some of that out later, as to what's going on with this. And oh man, the thing with the vaccine is so crazy. Like they can make a vaccine tomorrow, but the problem is if you make a vaccine, will it even work? Will your immune system be able to take up that vaccine and actually implement it as making antibodies and destroy the disease? That's a very low chance. That's why you have to do months and months of research. Secondarily, there's a chance that if you put a vaccine into somebody, that vaccine is going to make an antibody against something in your own body. And so now you've made antibodies against your own body and you've initiated an autoimmune disease.
Immune disease, yeah.
So that's a very serious thing as well. The third, there's people that will actually get a allergic reaction to the vaccine.
Yeah.
So then you have and that's lower percentage, but it's still a percentage, and you don't want to make one that's really immunogenic because it could cause an overwhelming allergic response. So and I can just keep going. There's all these problems with vaccines that have to have years and years of research and testing and all these different things before we're able to say it works, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, and just those two things alone have so much complexity to them that as I try and delve into that research a little bit, it seems really daunting to be able to get a vaccine. And so I think that's something that we should be pursuing as a scientific community, but not hoping for as a population.
Yeah.
And but what I think the main point too that I think that a lot of people are doing, and Doug Ducey, whether you like him or not, he at least I think has a good message on his last the May 21st or 20th, his little conference thing. There was a lot of stuff in there that I thought was total baloney, but there's also a couple good kind of nuggets, and one of them is that we're meeting the national government guidelines, these gatings.
Yep.
We're actually meeting those. And again, there's statistics and there's ways to manipulate those so that we meet them. And I don't know if that's going on because we are having some increase in cases, but the severity seems to be going down as well. And we do have more people in ICUs on ventilators than we have in the past. Like that number is still going up, but it's not overwhelming us. So the whole point of doing the shelter in place was to make sure that it
doesn't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, that
Healthcare,
we don't have an asymptotic curve. We don't overwhelm healthcare, because if you do overwhelm the hospitals, you're literally going to be stacking bodies outside because there are people that could have been saved.
Yeah.
And so that's a crazy thing. And so
that was the purpose of shelter in place to prepare.
The thing I think we can hold on to, things I think that we can hold on to is that the shelter in place did work. It lowered that curve. We didn't go up. I think we still have capacity in our hospitals. I think that some of the metrics, if you believe them, sorry, I keep saying that, but it's all we have.
Yeah.
And so if you believe it, and I am seeing in the hospital, we're not overwhelmed in Phoenix.
Do you believe that some COVID deaths are being called COVID deaths that probably aren't the main reason that they died of COVID?
I think there is.
In hospitals?
You
don't have to say specific anything from your own hospital, but I'm saying, is there an incentive to call something COVID when it's not the primary death of COVID.
To that, and I think some of the things that are hard to do is tease out. We don't have good data on a lot of stuff. I think there is a financial pressure to call things COVID death because you get more resources from the government.
Yeah.
And I have not felt that pressure personally.
Yep.
I also do know of 1 or 2 times where I think that coronavirus was probably not contributory to the death. But I can't make that call for sure because it's farther downstream from when I had the thing. And I do know that people looking at this are not involved in the case. They just are looking at the paperwork. Like they never saw the patient. They never saw. Do you know what I mean? So someone comes in, they're in respiratory distress. They test positive for COVID. They get admitted to the ICU. They die later. Respiratory distress plus positive COVID. I mean, that's an easy call that the coronavirus killed them. The details of that, of maybe they overdosed on heroin and so they weren't breathing for a long period of time because that kills your respiratory drive, may have been the actual cause of death, and they just incidentally tested positive for coronavirus.
There's a lot of fentanyl in Arizona. Well, I think the whole United States, but like fentanyl is a whole nother epidemic problem that is I would say epidemic levels.
Oh, for sure.
That
pandemic.
We don't pandemic levels that we don't seem to be even addressing at all. I wanted to go back to the testing.
The testing. Sorry,
because you were very specific with the testing, and I never heard this anywhere on TV or anything else, and it seemed like important information for people that wanted to get tested.
So there's a lot of testing out there.
Yeah.
There's testing for basically two different ways to test at this point. It's if you do have the disease, so they're testing for actual pieces of the virus.
Yep.
When they swab. So they swab that, they put it into a solution. They do something called PCR, polymerase chain reaction. And what they do is that PCR is a little enzyme, and it goes and it starts copying all the DNA in the sample. So it basically amplifies all the DNA in that sample. And then you put it through a gelphoresis, and then you see which DNA came out from that. And then they're looking for a specific spike in the coronavirus DNA. And so if you only have one piece of coronavirus DNA, that PCR will copy it a bunch of times, and then you'll get a spike. If there's 2, you'll get a double spike. If there's like that kind of thing, that's how it works. Is if there's any amount of DNA in that solution from your swab, then it augments it. It's almost like taking each one and saying, now we have DNA from his throat. It yells for the amount there. So I don't know if that was a good analogy actually, but it augments the presence. So that swab is highly dependent on where you swab it. The contact points that they've found are the corner of the eyes, the front of the nares, and the superior posterior oropharynx are the 3 places where there is protein binding sites specifically for the coronavirus. So that's the predominant places it is. The initial recommendations were pretty horrible. You used to swab the front of the nose, then slide the probe all the way back into the nose about 4 or 5 inches.
That feels good.
And touch the back of the superior posterior pharynx. And that people didn't really tolerate that. So
no.
So they switched to oral swabbing in the posterior portion or in the anterior nares. And then they quickly found that the anterior nares was not as highly productive, or it was very independent, because if you get kind of not inside the nares, it's kind of like inside, curled up underneath this kind of ridge. And so the nares is the opening. Sorry, probably should have said that. And so people weren't going deep enough for that, and they found that they were having a lot of false negative rates. And some of those tests in some of those studies were 40% false negative.
Yeah, so that was something I was thinking about too. I was like, okay. And then you said the next tests were like closer to like 13 or something like that.
Yeah, and so then the oropharynx one with highly active pursuant swabbing, they had which people are like, they're like dying and gagging and throwing up afterwards. those were swabs were doing better, and they were getting somewhere around the 13% range of false negatives. So you had about a 1 in 8 chance of being negative and actually being positive.
So, I mean, I'm not a statistics person, but like if I'm at 40%, like coming over negative, and then the next round of tests are better, you're going to have more positive cases.
Yes.
That doesn't mean there wasn't more positive cases before, but like,
Yes.
you should be having
the
an
data.
increase. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should have an increase of positive cases, not. But there were positive cases the whole
Just because
time.
you're actually finding them
Yes,
now.
you're finding them.
They were already there.
Yes, that's what
You
I'm.
just,
I guess that's what my point is. Like, there's more people that have it or had it, but you didn't know because the tests weren't right. But now the tests are better, and I'm sure like another round of tests will be even better than that. Hopefully.
Yeah. And now
It'll increase. So that would change all the numbers because.
And some of the new tests are getting better and better. Again, the big problem is the collection. That seems to be one of the sources of error, is how well people swab or how deep they go. So that's the detection one. And I don't know. And again, my data on those tests is about 2 weeks old. So I'm sorry if I'm not up to date. If it's
but
more,
still, 2 weeks ago, that's what my point is. Like, it wasn't where. They weren't working prior to that.
Well,
even
2 weeks ago, they had increased dramatically from 40 to like 13%, which is, I mean, anything over 90, I'm a lot happier with. At 40% wrong, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a flip of the coin.
That's it's almost a 50-50.
So that was pretty bad. And then we go to antibody. And so there's two types of antibody. There's the IgM, which is mucosal based, and then there's IgG, which is blood based antibodies. And they're a little bit different mechanism for each of those, but if you get a blood draw, you can test for both of those antibodies in the blood. And so the data on these tests are all over the place, and some of them seem to be really good, and those ones that seem to be good are the ones that are ELISA, which is a enzyme-linked immunoserum assay. I want to double check that I'm saying that right, because I get that wrong every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't think I could say one of those words that you just chained together.
It's let's see, but that's the one. So I think it does both PCR and enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So the sorbent is what I'm missing there. So that's it's able to measure the antibodies by the enzymes, and I don't think they use FISH, which is fluorescence, but so they're able to detect the enzyme goes and binds to the antibody, and then you're able to detect how many enzymes have been bound and how many haven't, if I remember the test correctly. And I may not be saying that correctly. I should have looked that up before this. I apologize. But the point is that the ELISA test is better than the one that just does PCR for antibodies.
Okay,
alone.
that was the kind of the information I wanted to get out. Like, you were
like
like,
a lot
"Hey,
better.
this is way better, guys," and I was like, I couldn't remember what you were saying.
And it seems like most of the tests that they're doing now are including that ELISA.
Okay.
So the percentages.
So blood
again,
is better.
Are above 90% on both of
A
those.
blood
for
test
both
with ELISA
sensitivity and specificity.
is better if you're looking for antibodies.
Yes. And so
Meaning
you
you've
can't
already
even
had it.
If you try to do an antibody test without blood, that would be useless test. That's so
How
my
long?
house should
How
be a
long
good spot.
do you think things are contaminated for?
Oh my gosh.
Just surfaces all, because that seems to be all over the place too. Their new thing is saying that contamination is happening less off of surfaces than they thought. Was the new thing this week. But
so any surface that transmits disease is called a fomite. And that's kind of a cool word. But certain surfaces hold virus and bacteria longer than other surfaces. Anything that has moisture or grooves in it
that makes
tends
sense.
to hold things a lot better. They can do swabs and detect by PCR and other things if the virus is still there after a certain amount of days. Like stainless steel is less than like the bottom of your shoes. Like that plastic on the bottom of your shoes is the ridges and everything holds moisture, holds all sorts of stuff. The bottom of your shoes is a horrible place as far as bacteria, viruses, everything is all in there. And then there's other things though too, like is it directly in the sunlight? Because UV really knocks down the amount of viral load and bacterial load. And then on top of that, temperature. So if it's like extremely cold, there's not a lot of replication, or none. And actually, there's some destruction. And if it's really hot, the same thing. Really, like anything over 105 degrees, you start losing the quaternary structure of proteins due to the low energy capacity in those bonds. And so basically, just real quick, your proteins have amino acids in a chain. Amino acids form sheets, which is the secondary. So you have primary, secondary structures. Tertiary is folding of those sheets. And then you take one sheet, another sheet, and you put it together, and that's quaternary structure, the fourth level of structure.
It's crazy how we were made.
And those bonds that hold the two proteins together that form a receptor site or an enzyme site or whatever it is that the protein needs are the lowest energy. Each one of those is, so amino acids high energy, link to link. Then the sheets is slightly lower but high energy. Then as you fold it back, those are kind of a lower energy, and then the lowest energy of all is that quaternary structure. So any heat applied is applying energy, and that easily breaks those bonds apart. That's why temperatures above 105 are really concerning, because you start to actually denature the proteins in your brain at 106.
Yeah, when you're having a temperature.
Yeah,
it's trying to like burn it out of you, basically, right?
Well, but if you get to 106, it's out of control.
Yeah.
Your body's too hot, and then you start losing your proteins in your brain, which is your memories and your ability to think and all that stuff. So 106 is a bad point. However, in Arizona, it's a good point for us because everything outside gets over 106. So
yeah, I was even telling Carly, I was like, like the server, like when it's 100 outside, the server temperature of things is way hotter than 100. Like the surface of my car is like
inside the cars, especially,
or inside the car, but even like the metal, the handle you do touch, it's something that you touch. You're always worried about touching. Well, that handle in Arizona is, I don't know, maybe, I never exaggerate, but it's at least 2 million degrees, at least. So it's hot, like everything's hot. Obviously in here, the air conditioners, so that doesn't apply, but everything outside for sure is hot.
And so
and when I'm walking, you were talking about your shoes, but like
on the surface of
anything outside, the pavement, I mean, every year the newscasters crack eggs and boil them or fry them on the sidewalk. So like anywhere you're walking in Arizona on the ground is extremely, extremely hot.
Again, frying everything. I have no data to support this, but I look at MERS and SARS, and both of them disappeared in the summer, and the transmission rates went dramatically down as the heat level got higher. And for us in Arizona, I am welcoming summer because I think it's going to be a significant decrease in any ability of fomites to transfer the disease. I already think that fomites are probably less likely to transfer the disease. I don't know that it seems like it's actually pretty hardy out of the body, which is unfortunate that this virus is that strong. I mean, there's some places where it said that it persists on surfaces like handrails like 21 days.
Oh, geez.
They're able to detect it. And again, if we get up to 120 degrees, that's probably going to go away pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
So I just think that the summer will be good for us. And again, I don't have any coronavirus data to support that. It's my sincere hope that the elevated temperatures outside will not allow fomite transmission. And then on top of that, I think people going in pools all the time is probably going to be a good thing too. So, and again, I know data to support it, but these are all things that I think would
chlorine and sunlight,
and
hot temperature,
would be pretty good. It's going to be a lot harder to transmit stuff person to person when you're in a pool because of the chlorine and because of the sunlight. Again, I don't have any data to do that. Maybe it's worse. Maybe you jump in the pool and you just infected everybody in the pool.
Not. Please,
but I think that's very unlikely, especially in Arizona. So anyway, I think that the big things for me are disease under 45 is most likely going to be asymptomatic or very mild, and the mortality rate is currently, as far as I can tell from the data, if it's a healthy kid under 10, there's zero mortality. And I think that might be the worldwide data on world meters. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure Under 10, there's zero mortality unless you have a significant comorbidity, which is great, which means that all the healthy kids that we got running around should be totally fine. And then under 45 is really low mortality unless you have a comorbidity. And the concern should be not for your kids or for someone under 45, but it should be for someone with decreased pulmonary function, which is any aspect
that
of
is
their
going to be
health.
around the kids.
Yeah, and elderly people, specifically over age 55.
Yep.
You start really dramatically increasing your risk of severe disease.
Yeah.
And then by severe disease, I mean like maybe need to go to the hospital, get admitted, maybe intubated, those kind of things, like that whole class of this is not something you can stay at home for.
Yep.
Otherwise, I think everyone under 45 can, if they start having a fever, if they start having a cough, if they think they have the coronavirus, they need to self-isolate. They need to do Tylenol, ibuprofen, and fluids, which is tiff it out. That's still my message, you know.
Yeah.
Don't go to the hospital because for sure you're gonna get coronavirus. They got coronavirus there. And so Tylenol, ibuprofen, and fluids. If you need to if you're having severe shortness of breath, seek.
Well, that was one thing you told me, that like it's a time sensitive thing. Like as soon as you feel like,
as soon as you really start having trouble breathing, you need to be calling the ambulance.
Right?
It's a rapid deterioration.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately is one of the things that I've seen too, is like even people who have other diseases, they're trying to stay away from the hospital, which is awesome, but they're waiting a little too late.
Okay.
There's some people that have not had their medicines for 4 or 5 days because they're worried about going to the pharmacy. And that's really, high blood pressure, diabetes, those kind of medicines, you have to stay on those.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have severe problems. So make sure and take your medication.
Yeah, that stuff bothers me. I think even jiu-jitsu, like, that helps people. The jiu-jitsu, we could talk about pulmonary function, but the community of jiu-jitsu, I think, not just our school, but any school, is a powerful thing, I don't know how many people listen.
Physical touch is powerful, too.
Yeah.
Like, when I was here on Wednesday, David Weaver hugged me twice, and it was like awesome.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah,
bring it in, Dave. Bring it in.
Yeah, there's something that we need. I really feel like it's a need, not like a want. Yeah. It's an actual need, is contact.
Well, if you touch somebody, you're telling them pretty powerfully that they're not disgusting or untouchable, and that those things that people can get in their head, like nobody wants me, nobody likes me, and just a touch can sometimes be
you're okay.
A complete, abrogation of those thoughts. And so, I mean, hugs are a serious love weapon. You just come in there and
you're a hugger for sure. I'm a hugger too. But the community is like important. I think it's super important. So, I feel like we're on the outside of this now. Hopefully
the downside.
Yeah. And
we need that herd immunity is the problem right now. We've squished it down so that our transmission rates are low and our curve is low. And the problem is that we're not going to have a lot of people who have had the disease and recovered. And that's part of the push by the government to try and get the antibody tested, that hopefully it's been more prevalent than we've seen.
Than we thought.
And that more people are actually immune, because you want to, once you get to that, some people say 60, but most people I've seen say 70% of the population has had it and recovered.
That's a lot.
I know it's a lot, and we're only at something like 15 or 20% right now. So we need to get up to the point where, it's like it doesn't matter if you have it. I've already had it, so I'm not going to get it again. And then that's another question: is there immunity conferred by the antibodies?
Yet. We don't know yet.
Again, going back to the SIRS, and the MERS, it looks like we can kind of count on 2 years of immunity and maybe even up to 5 and 6. But again, no coronavirus data. So that's what we're trying to get right now with those antibody testing. So I would encourage people, if they can, to get the antibody testing. I would encourage them to get the ELISA testing. I would encourage them to, especially if they're younger, to do normal activities and to get out and to be there, because if you do get the disease, it's going to be mild. All of that saying, like, go do stuff, but if you have contact with people who are at risk, try and continue to limit that contact or eliminate that contact.
Bye. Peace.
Bye. Out.